Today is maintenance day in DC Dark Legion, and we've got a huge update that Fun Plus pushed to the game. We're going to go through all of the update notes. We'll talk about some of the implications of some of the changes that they've made. We've got a new combat cycle boss coming. We've got a new game mode, KRYPTON Rush, that's actually going to be happening this weekend for servers 200 through 205. We got a few other goodies in store. I'd also like to show you a couple of posts that I think are really important that SuperHelen, our community manager, has made over the last week in Discord. And then I also want to provide an update on a stat issue or a question that I posed to the devs about how spiritual amp works. We finally got an answer on that one, so I'm really excited to share these things with you. So let's jump over to the official Discord and take a look at what we got. Okay, so first and foremost, we have a new Hypertime tracker update that should be coming to a lot of servers in the next couple of days. If you are currently on Scarecrow, you should be getting Deathstroke in your server around the time that Scarecrow's bleed goes to about 14 days left. So be on the lookout for that. You will be getting specific updates in your server mail for whoever you're going to be getting. So definitely be on the lookout. And while we're talking about the Hypertime tracker, I want to point out originally we were supposed to be getting Nightwing on servers 200 through 205. That is pretty much soft confirmed to be the next champion in the bleed calendar. It appears, and there's not much information on why, but it appears that Nightwing has been pushed because servers 200 through 205 woke up to Scarecrow being the next bleed champion, so there is a repeat there. I believe that Scarecrow is the only bleed champion that server 205 had never gotten before, so this should kind of put us on track where all of servers 200 through 205, sort of the legacy servers, will have kind of caught up on the bleed through Hawkgirl. So probably not the news that most players on the legacy servers wanted to hear, but we'll get through Scarecrow, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we're going to be seeing Nightwing come into the game, and a lot of you newer players will be able to kind of see our rosters and see what you have to look forward to in the coming weeks, the coming months. On the topic of Scarecrow, most people should still have him in their bleed or their Hypertime tracker on the newer servers. Now that Scarecrow is basically going to be available for everyone, I am going to be putting out my next whale or skip video for Scarecrow. That should be coming out in the next 2 or 3 days, so be on the lookout for that one. If you're looking to pull for Scarecrow or you're wondering whether you should pull for him, that video will hopefully clarify his kit and give you a little bit of advice on how to approach it. The next thing to talk about is a new event that is coming to the game. It was listed in the roadmap that SuperHelen posted a couple of weeks ago, and it's called Great Krypton Rush. This is an event that's kind of similar to Guardian Challenge. The tagline for this event is that basically a Kryptonian transport spaceship has crashed, and a lot of rare goods have been scattered around a map. And then basically we are challenged with having to seize certain strongholds and claim the resources. It's going to be, it appears, a league versus league matchup. So it's not going to be like Guardian Challenge where you have 4 different leagues vying for the same resources. It's going to be 2 leagues, and you're going to be going against Dark Legion, so like coordinated assaults, trying to obtain certain strategic locations that are going to give you resources to help you push forward on the map. It is a time-limited event, and I'm super excited because my main champion or my main character is on server 204. The first matches for this event are going to be on servers 200 through 205, and they're actually going to happen this weekend. So it's super, super exciting. One of the limitations for this event is that you will have to be one of the top 20 leagues on the server in order to participate. So if you're in a smaller league, it's kind of one of those things where you have to decide whether you want to try to move up into a better league so you can participate, or whether you're okay with just not doing it. It is sort of a competitive event, so keep that in mind. And we can jump in and take a look at this together. So you can see you do get some gems here. Of course, we've got our rewards. So first place is going to be getting a couple of World Anvil fragments, some gems, and some AC/DC shards. Second place does get a reasonable amount of resources as well. It's not a game mode where you're getting a ton of things. I'm curious whether as you win matches and move up, maybe there's going to be some sort of leaderboard where these rewards will increase. But it's kind of a low risk thing. It's not like you're vying for dozens of world fragments or anything like that. But nice to see that there are a few rewards here. You can see that we can register. So I have registered. We've got all the requirements that we need for matchmaking. Once the registration period ends, we will be able to go into and look at the roster setup. My understanding is that you will have 20 slots. I think there's some rules we can take a look at here. So league must be ranked in the top 20. At least 20 members must register. And then for roster selection, you're going to select 20 starter rosters and 10 substitutes. So everyone in the league should be able to put forward a starting roster, and then the league leaders would have the ability to go in and decide who is going to actually get to participate in the event. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a full league participation event. So it's really just going to be taking the 20 to 30 best squads that you can muster and put them into the map. I'm not sure whether this means that you could have a whale who's able to submit 4 squads, for example, but this is something that we'll just have to explore as the weekend goes on. My plan is to try to get some footage of the event, and then I'll do a follow-up video specifically dedicated to KRYPTON Rush sometime next week so that everyone will have a good idea how it works before this gets pushed out to all of the newer servers. So keep on the lookout for that. A couple of administrative items. The 20 starter teams are going to be able to enter as soon as the event begins, and then the substitutes can join after 5 minutes if there are any open slots available. So if you're a substitute, there's a chance that you may not get to participate in the event, but it is important that you show up and be available for your team, just in case something happens and someone has to drop or someone wasn't able to join at the beginning. So definitely a nuance that you want to be paying attention to. So that's it for the summary of Great KRYPTON Rush. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a nice addition for people who are looking for something else to do and that are very competitive. The next update is to combat cycle. So a lot of people, especially on the early servers, have complained that they've kind of already maxed out all of the rewards for several of the combat cycle bosses, and the developers have come up with this as a solution. They're calling it Phase 2, and this is going to be available on April 29th, so in about 5 days from now. They're making the battles tougher, and they're going to provide more rewards. Right now, the max for all the combat cycle bosses is 240 milestones. You will have to achieve all 240 milestones in all 7 of the combat cycle events before you're able to unlock Phase 2, which is going to be quite difficult. I've been playing on server 204 since December 27th when the soft launch happened, and I still have a couple of the combat cycle bosses, particularly the Drowned, where I haven't hit all 240 milestones. So it is going to take a while for non-spenders and light spenders to get to that point, but just be patient and know that the reward cycle is going to keep going for you. So you're not going to be dealing with the same frustration points as some of us older players will be dealing with. Obviously, there's no way to take back the frustrations that have been felt by a lot of us, but it is nice to see that they're doing some things to adjust the economy and fix this. While we're talking about combat cycle, a new boss has been launched for combat cycle. So we're finally going to have all 7 combat cycle bosses in the game. I'm super excited about Red Death. We've seen a couple of teasers for his event, and you can see here where Wolf posted yesterday that the teaser is faster than the eye can follow and deadlier than ever. He rips open time rifts to unleash devastating power. His relentless assault leaves no escape, and even those who survive will find their healing suppressed, because against Red Death, there is no recovery, only destruction. This reads to me as sort of a survival mode where you're going to have to deal with mechanics that are going to make it difficult to heal, or you're going to be taking a massive amount of damage. You're probably going to have to look at either 2 healer setups or some other way to provide yourself some good protection, shields, things like that. Any sort of damage mitigation is going to help you. And then this comment about opening time rifts to unleash devastating power, I'm also assuming that there's going to be some sort of mechanic where there's going to be things that pop up on the battlefield that you're going to have to deal with, maybe some sort of ads or something that you can deal damage to that can also deal damage back. So I'm curious how that's going to play out, but I really like that they're doing more of these combat cycle bosses that have sort of a puzzle. So it's going to take specific champions, or it's going to take maybe even controlling your champions manually at times to be able to beat the boss, or to be able to do enough damage to, get to that phase 2 and really push deep into the combat cycle. So really excited about Red Death. It looks like he will open up on April 29th, which is going to be Tuesday for us in the US. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but this should be against the Devastator boss that has the 2 Lex Luthors with it. So we're going to retain the Devastator that's just the single target, and we'll get rid of the other placeholder Devastator that has the 2 Lex Luthors. So I'm really excited to have kind of a full slate that we can talk through. I'm actually working with a couple of folks to see if we can put together some additional infographics on kind of how everything works. We'll put together like a combat cycle timeline, and similar to like the bleed calendar, where it's easier for you to kind of see which bosses are on which days, what rewards you can get, that sort of thing. So be on the lookout for that, and also be on the lookout for one of my guide videos where we'll break down Red Death. That one will probably come, I'm not sure I'll be able to get it out on the day that Red Death launches, but we'll see what happens. Just be on the lookout for that one in the next 5 to 7 days. We did get an unfortunate bit of news for the Anti-Crime Network for anyone who's trying to push that. It seems that they have made some of those Anti-Crime Network levels harder. I don't know if they saw that people were able to push through it quicker than normal. I can tell you that I've been struggling on a few of them. I'm in the mid-20s on a lot of those levels, and it's already challenging enough. So I'm curious how much harder it's going to be now. But they did add more resource levels. So for folks who have more advanced rosters, you are going to be able to push a little bit higher in the Anti-Crime Network, which is a good thing, especially for those folks who are at level 35 Armory and they're trying to push their gear higher. We got a quick update here for War Room upgrade requirements. As you guys know, I have a War Room upgrade requirement graphic that's been put out. I worked on that one with Chloe, and it's, I think, really helpful for people who are trying to start their accounts, and really anyone who's trying to push to level 35 to know what to expect in the future. My understanding of what this change is, so basically, if you have multiple designated rooms that you need to be able to upgrade to the next War Room level, this change means that you only need to meet the requirement for one of those rooms. So between levels 1 and 10, when you're first starting out, there are a lot of War Room upgrades that require multiple rooms to be at a specific level. For those, you're only going to need one of those now, which is going to make it a lot easier to upgrade your War Room for those first 10 levels, which is like the first 2 or 3 days that you're playing the game. And then for level 35, it was originally set up where you had to have your research lab, your training nexus, your Wayne chips, and your Wayne steel all at level 35, or all at level 34 to upgrade to 35. I believe this change is going to mean that when you get to level 34 on any one of those rooms and you've met all the other requirements, that you'll be able to upgrade to 35. So I think that's actually a really good change for non-spenders and folks who, if you don't have that second construction queue, that sort of thing, you'll be able to kind of get to that upgrade mark a little bit faster. There are some improvements to Training Simulator. So there's going to be new milestone rewards. And this one's actually really cool. We can jump over and take a look at that. They also made some screen improvements, so I think there's going to be some overlay changes to kind of previews and things that you can see over in Training Simulator. Okay, so immediately you can see up here in the top left-hand corner that there's a reward track that you're able to claim for meeting certain targets. Now, I'm on level 904, so I'll be able to claim these first 9, which is actually really amazing. The fact that you get these Lex Luthor shards at target 100 means I'll have to do some update videos on this, but you have the path of justice when you first start out in the game. You have to get to target level 100 in the training sim as one of the milestones for that. And So when you get to that target 100, you're going to be able to unlock these 20 Lex Luthor shards. But also with Path of Justice, you're able to choose, I believe, between Batgirl, Lex, Ivy, and a couple of others, maybe Black Canary's in there. But point being, if you are going to be getting some Lex Luthor shards here, it might actually make a lot of sense for non-spenders to maybe focus on picking one of the other champions. I personally prefer Ivy, but you could take Ivy or Batgirl and you're going to get this Lex. So it's actually really nice. Let's go ahead and claim these. Those AC/DC shards are really helpful. You're getting a lot of anvils here. The thing that I love is these random mythic shards. So I'm going to have 80 that I'll be able to open up. Really great. And then, once you get to level 1000, that means that you're either a whale or you've been playing the game for a while. It's really nice to see that there is another way here, kind of free-to-play way to earn some transmute tokens. And that's going to be a resource that in-game players are going to use to transmute their level 500 gear. Really cool that they added this. The next change is to league management. The league log has been added under league settings, and it's going to allow all of your R4s and R5s to view certain logs and historical actions associated with your league. So I think that's a really good tool for folks. We've been asking for that for months, and it's going to be really great quality of life, just more ways to manage the league from within the game. And then there's also a portal for editing the league announcement, which is going to be really huge for kind of letting people know what's going on in the game. If you're not on Discord, it's going to be helpful to get information on, hey, there's going to be a rift tomorrow, make sure you show up. If you're not checking your mail frequently, you might get that league notification when you go in to, do your tech donations for the day, and it'll give you that reminder that, the rift is going to be starting soon, or Guardian Challenger, or what have you. So really nice addition for leaders of leagues to be able to kind of herd the troops, so to speak. And then we have a couple of improvements to league mobilization. This is not a game mode that I particularly care for, but it's one of those things that if you play it right and you play it in conjunction with your Supreme Commander, you can actually get a decent amount of rewards for very little investment. They have updated the mission attempt system, so you're going to get 2 free attempts on the first day, and after that, 1 free attempt is given every day, and then an extra attempt available to claim each day. The other thing they're doing is changing the personal point rewards, so players are going to be able to instantly claim those personal rewards after reaching the required points. And then league point rewards. League points are only going to be claimable once both the league and personal points meet the required thresholds. So if the personal point requirement isn't met, the corresponding league reward won't be available. This is actually a bit of a negative for some people. I can see why they're doing it. I think maybe they're seeing that a lot of people aren't attempting league mobilization and they're just kind of piggybacking off of their league. But that's really kind of the point of this system, is that you're able to kind of get some rewards based on your league having a couple of whales who are doing some heavy spending and kind of hitting a lot of those milestones for you. So this is probably going to be something that hurts free-to-play players and maybe less active players, because you're not going to be able to claim those league rewards unless you're really pushing super far on your on track. And so it's going to mean that, your whales are going to be fine. They're going to be able to max everything out. But unless you're being very strategic with your league mobilization work, it's going to be difficult to get those rewards. So definitely something where you're going to be receiving less than you used to. So be mindful of that. And then the last thing to talk about as far as the update notes, they did fix an issue in 3v3 Strategic Challenge where people who were higher than 100 plus in the rankings for the master level of 3v3 were not able to claim their end of season rewards. I was able to claim mine yesterday, or I guess early this morning, I should say. So it was nice to see that they made that fix. And then they also fixed some language and display bugs. The last big point that I want to make here, and this is sort of a future looking statement, but SuperHelen was kind enough to inform us that the devs have been listening to our feedback on the league train, and we've got some huge updates here. Now, this is not going to happen until maybe early to mid-May. At least that's what they're saying right now. It might get pushed, but look for this in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But a small default reward is going to be added. so that everyone who at least signs up for the league train is going to get something. You may not get on the train and get the actual full train rewards, but you're at least going to get some league contribution points. And I think that's really nice for the folks to get a consolation prize if they get left off the train. A lot of folks like me have been incredibly unlucky with trains, and so it's really good to see that they're listening to some of those frustrations and pain points that we've had. The other thing is all top 20 leagues, and this is going to be determined by battle power rankings, you can see that in the game, are going to get a free daily Brave line. This is a really good quality of life change that they've made, because I think it's been frustrating for a lot of the semi-competitive leagues who aren't in the top 5 to 7, who have not been able to take a city because they're all being hoarded by the best leagues in the server, not being able to participate in the Brave line. So the fact that they're going to change the way this works means that a ton of additional players are going to get the opportunity to experience the train event and get some rewards from it. So I think we're going to see the world map populated with a lot more trains going forward. And I just think this is a really, really good olive branch that the devs are giving us for this event. The next big item that I want to touch on here, and I'll probably mention it in future videos as I'm discussing champions that have this stat or that this stat is important for them, but we received some feedback from the developers, and I spoke to SuperHelen about this within the last day, but we know now exactly how Spiritual Amp works, and maybe some of you are shaking your heads because you already knew this, but I felt like that I brought this to SuperHelen's attention, and other people have as well, that the wording was a bit ambiguous about what spiritual damage range meant. Whether that meant the range that the range that your attack might reach on the battlefield, so someone had to be close enough to be able to do damage to them, or whether it meant that the range of actual damage that you could do. So maybe if you could do a minimum of 100 damage up to 150, spiritual amp would mean that if you get an increase, it would take it from 100 to 150 to, let's say, 125, 175. The response from the devs is that range is not the attack distance, but rather the base damage value range. So just what I said, if your attack had a damage range of 100 to 150, the amp would raise this to 120 to 170, for example. So that's what's meant by damage range. I think that's really helpful clarification. I've also asked for clarifications on, exactly how the calculations are done for all the various different damage amounts. I'm curious exactly how spiritual amp is calculated, if that's something that the devs are willing to tell us, or if it's something that there's a way for us to figure it out from looking at all the different stats. So if I figure out that there is a way to calculate that easily, I will happily share that with everyone so that people can do a little bit of planning and kind of see what their squads are capable of. I think that would be helpful information. So more to come on that if we hear from it, but I think at least we know how Spiritual Amp works, and wanted to provide that clarification because I think I've mentioned this in previous videos, like maybe my Joker deep dive video. I mentioned that how I thought Spiritual Amp worked. So if you go back and look at that video, my apologies, but now you know how that works. Okay, so let's switch gears, and I'm going to try to rapid fire this for you, but I wanted to give you a little bit of information that I saw, some things that caught my eye that SuperHelen was talking about in the official Discord. Sometimes she goes in and interacts with the community, and I really think that this is one of the things that makes her a really great community manager, is her willingness to try to provide as much information as possible when she gets it from the devs, and just kind of give us a little bit of a glimpse into what's happening right now, what could potentially happen in the future. And so if you're not on the official Discord, I highly recommend that you go to the link in the description of this video and join, because you're going to be getting a ton of information like this. Sometimes you have to search for it because she kind of is talking in real time. It's not stuff that's being collated, except on sort of a monthly basis. She does have a community news roundup where she's talking about some of the big things that she's talked about with the devs, some of the things that have been addressed in the past, and some of the big things to look out for in the future. So, again, highly recommend going to the official Discord to see this kind of stuff, but I'm also going to try to be providing these things to you as they come through. each month as well. So let's jump into the first one. There was a conversation that was being had about some of the Titans and a few other characters. So we had Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, Beast Boy, Starfire, and people were talking about some of the other Titan champions. Whether or not they were coming to the game anytime soon. Helen's comment was, all the champions you guys are currently talking about, you'll have a good summer. That's all I'll say. So I think we have at least soft confirmation that some of those champions I just mentioned should be coming to the game within the coming months. I have seen some other speculation about some other champions and characters, and we'll talk about some of that when we get to the end of this conversation. There was a question about, what types of champions would come to the Bleed in the future. We get confirmation that it's just going to be Mythic Plus or the 40 shard Mythics that are going to be part of the Bleed. So there are also going to be some of the 10 shard Mythics, or what she called the common reds, coming as well. So I think we'll be seeing more champions that go into the daily deals, that go into the mystery store, league store, etc. There are going to be new ways for you to obtain champions in the future. There was a question about the ETA on that mythic upgrade that was promised, and it looks like end of May. So we're looking at maybe a 4 to 5 week timeline for when we'll get that. I'm still crossing my fingers that it's going to be Wonder Woman. But there's some other interesting comments that were made later in this conversation that we'll get into as well. We did have a question about whether there was actually a lot of discussion on whether there would be more legendaries coming to the game. And I'm not going to read through all of the comments, but the gist of it was that there probably aren't any plans for additional legendaries to come to the game. Kind of the thought process, in Helen's words, is after you start changing up to or upgrading to the Mythic champions, you're unlikely to want to go back to those legendaries just because of the power creep involved. So you're going to see more ways to farm those common 10 shard Mythics, and maybe more ways to upgrade the legendaries to Mythics in the future. So I'm hoping that the upgrade for the one legendary that was promised goes well and everyone's happy with it. And then we'll get to a point where pretty much all of those legendaries would be upgradable to a mythic, so that you feel like you can get a little bit more use out of them. There were more questions about kind of the Bleed calendar and whether there is a timeline for the full rotation. What's going to happen when we get to the end? Will they just tack more on to the end of it? Will there be new Bleeds that are coming? It sounds like SuperHelen wants to circle back on that one. We don't have a full rotation or timeline for that. And as she has said in the past multiple times, this is subject to change. I would just say don't get used to the current Bleed calendar, because you never know when it might change. Maybe they'll add something new. In the landscape beta of the game, that you had kind of two Bleeds that were running in tandem with each other. And so there were multiple tracks you could go on and go after specific champions that you wanted to build, or teams you wanted to build. So I think there's probably good stuff to come there. Obviously, we've seen this today because they're doing a special repeat for Scarecrow out of line for servers 200 through 205, but we're going to see more of these repeat bleeds that happen. Hopefully some of that's going to be kind of, again, in tandem with the main Bleed calendar. We'll see how that works. She's mentioning specifically special events here, so I'm wondering if you'll see something like a specific Bleed repeat or Bleed champions for the Superman movie this summer. You can see a couple of these comments here just kind of talking about the legendary system. I think Helen was trying to get at the fact that it seems like a lot of people are hung up on the idea that there are legendaries in the game and there aren't going to be any new ones. But kind of, again, her point is they're trying to make it easier to get the Mythic champions. And wouldn't you want to have more shards of the Mythic plus, or excuse me, the 10 shard Mythics versus the legendaries, when the power creep is going to have those 10 shard Mythics being better champions? So I personally am okay with how she's cased this. I think it's difficult sometimes to see the forest for the trees when you have something like these rarity systems, and it just kind of feels like, there's a massive amount of Mythic champions and there's hardly any legendaries. But what she's saying makes a lot of sense here. So we had someone make a really good point about wanting to have events where you can farm specific shards. So like having a Justice League event, kind of different ways at various times to feel like you can upgrade your account. I'm curious whether there might be something like that for, again, like the Superman movie, or other DC events or milestones or anniversaries where you can go in and farm certain champions. As someone had also met, SuperHelen had mentioned the Red Hood event that happens when a new server opens, and I want to see more things like that. But her point is that these shard farming methods they're very new, and we kind of got to let them run their course, kind of let the devs analyze how the economy looks and how these things affect the economy before they start adding new things in. And then more recently, last night, there was a comment made by SuperHelen, and she said it was subject to change, but people were asking for what some of the other holiday events were going to be. So, we had the Valentine's event. We are currently doing the Easter event. It appears that there's going to be a Mother's Day theme, a summer themed event, something around, she says, a certain movie, obviously the Superman movie, a back to school theme, and then potentially Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas will have something as well, but those are a little bit further into the future. I'm super excited to hear that all of those things are coming. I think we can reasonably expect that these future events are going to have more ways to obtain skins for your base at least, and potentially they'll start adding skins for characters in the future. Although that one seems like it's more up in the air whether it will happen. Bit of a long video for you today, but I wanted to make sure that I provided you as much value as possible from this update. I hope that you're as excited as I am about some of these events that are going to be coming. I'm super stoked about the Great Krypton Rush event that's going to be happening this weekend. Again, try to get you as much footage as possible of that event in action. And I'm also looking forward to Red Death coming next week. Be on the lookout for a video associated with that one as soon as I put my guide together. If you have any questions about any of the update notes from today or need any clarifications, happy to answer those in the comments below. Be sure to like the video if you've enjoyed the content, and consider subscribing for additional Dark Legion content and other games in the future, and I'll see you on the next video.